Hello, welcome back to Pittsburgh Sportsline. Got a pretty good show for you tonight. I'm Mike Migliori, joined by Chip Hayner, Smoking Jim Frazier, and Al Levine, the talking machine. We'll start off with what's on our minds. And Al, what's on your mind?
What's on my mind is the Kentucky Derby. I was out at the Meadows making a few bets for my friends. Sorry, RB. Sorry, Lorraine. Sorry, Al. Sorry, Janice. The $20 we each spent. Number 19, come in there at the end, beat Bodemeister down at the finish. First time ever showing my kind of luck when you're betting that the 19 won the race. We had a few of the other horses in the top four, but no such luck there. But I have to give a shout out to my biggest fan. Hope picked number 19. And with a little guidance, I told her how to bet a few horses.
Wow.
She had win, place, and show on the horse, so she showed a profit. And her husband put his bets in too, so Gary, sorry no winner there, but I'll bring the cash after the show there. And that's some of what's on my mind. I'm sure we'll discuss some of the other things later on. But I also was at a Kentucky Derby party for cystic fibrosis in Shadyside at Mario's Eastside Saloon. And I want to give a shout out to Chris Kale for inviting me. And also, Lisa, you ran a great fundraiser there. It was fantastic watching the show. And I like the lady that won. She took home a big trophy there. No money, but a trophy. That's what's on my mind.
All right, Al, thanks. Jim, what's on your mind?
Thanks, Magic Mike. At those horse racing parties is where I usually pick up most of my glue. Hey, I got to thank my main man, Chip. He recommended a restaurant. I won't say the name, but all-you-can-eat meat. And I tell you what, Chip, I got to shake your hand. Man, I had a great time. It was a beautiful place. I ate well, but Chip and his beautiful wife, Stephanie, didn't tell me about the black beans and pork. And I'm telling you, Al, there ain't nothing like black beans poured over white rice.
With any grains on the side. What's wrong with you?
But I tell you what, people that watch this show know this is the only show on TV where there's no bull. Hey, listen, I love Ben Roethlisberger. Let's put it out there. A degree from Big Ben? Hey, listen, you're talking to a man that only got through high school. I'm talking about myself in college because some girls helped me write my paper and helped me with my homework. In college, believe me, tutors did the majority of my papers for me and helped me get through college. And I didn't have $100 million. Listen, I keep track of Big Ben because I like to know where all the women are. Listen, Big Ben played football all the way through January. So school started in January, so he took a month off, I guess, being that he went to the Pro Bowl in February. So after being out of school for approximately 10 years, Ben was 5 weeks behind all the other students, but made a miraculous recovery. Hey, listen, Ben bounced back and forth from his house here in Pittsburgh to his house in Atlanta, never made it to the University of Miami. Let me tell you how Ben got that degree. He got the degree with his wife. His wife did all the work online. Ben got $100 million. She's a stay-at-home wife, very intelligent lady, was smart enough to marry Ben. And she's the one that deserves the degree. If you want to question that, just give Ben a pop quiz. I bet you it fails it. And he's the only person on the planet Earth that got an education degree but never did any student teaching. Way to go, Big Ben. And lastly, everybody up here knows that the greatest football player of all time is Ray Lewis. And Ray Lewis is definitely the greatest linebacker of all time. But a close second got to be the late, great Junior Seau. In 1994, with reservations already made for me to go to the Super Bowl in Miami, I watched Junior Seau take apart the Pittsburgh Steelers. I've never seen a linebacker take over a game like he did. And Junior Seau was just a great, great player. And I'm thankful to all the recent NFL ex-football players who committed suicide. I'm just thankful that they shot themselves in the chest and preserved their brain for further study.
Thanks, Jim. I'd like to, on the side again, tell everybody that Jim Frazier is a friend of mine, and as dumb as he might sound when he says that Ray Lewis is the greatest football player ever, he doesn't really believe that. And I think that in addition to Jim, although Jim didn't get to go to the Super Bowl that year, all you Steeler fans should feel pretty good that Junior Seau beat the Steelers that day because they didn't have to take the whooping that San Diego took at the Super Bowl that year. Past all that, Chip, what's on your mind?
Thanks, Mike. What's on my mind tonight are a couple of things that are baseball related. The first one is the huge waste of time with the Roger Clemens trial, which is now dragging itself into its fourth week. And it's got to the point that the judge has talked to the attorneys and told them to speed things along because he's getting tired of it. And I think the only reason why they're carrying this case on is so that they can finally get it over with so he can't be tried for it again. It's a complete waste of the taxpayers' money, and the United States government is doing such a poor job with it. This case is already lost. They should just throw in the towel. But the other thing on my mind this week is over the weekend, there's some things that happen in baseball that have been around in baseball as long as baseball has been played. The Pirates are 126 years old, okay? And Cole Hamels, the pitcher for the Philadelphia Phillies, hit a rookie, 19-year-old Bryce Harper for the Washington Nationals. And then after the game, he said, you know what, I did that on purpose. He goes, I wasn't trying to injure him. I was just sending a little message. And the thing I find disturbing about this is that Major League Baseball has decided to suspend Cole Hamels for 5 games. Batters being hit by pitchers is something that's happened since the beginning of time in baseball. And if we're going to start, doing this, now if it's somebody's hunting somebody's head, I can see where that could be an issue. But, the punishment is really nothing because here's Cole Hamels is going to miss 5 games. He's not even going to miss his next start in a rotation. Okay, so there's no penalty there. And at what point is every time a pitcher hits a batter, is he going to be suspended or ejected, or what's going to happen now when a pitcher tries to pitch inside? The whole bread and butter of a good pitcher is the inside part of the plate. You need to keep the batter off the plate. You do that by pitching inside, and every once in a while, somebody's got to take one in the ribs. I think of an amazing pitcher I watched when I was a child who's in the Hall of Fame. And he wouldn't even let a batter get comfortable in the batter's box, and he would drill him with a fastball thrown in the high 90s. Bob Gibson was one of the greatest pitchers that ever lived. And if you looked comfortable in the batter's box, you were going to get hit. But, he had that respect and that fear of the hitters, which is what made him so good. So I think that baseball completely overreacted. Cole Hamels should have probably not admitted that he did that on purpose because everybody knows what happens in baseball. And, I think it's just setting a bad trend for baseball. But what's on my mind.
I agree with you.
You know what, Chip? I got to disagree with you on that because the fact that Hamels did get on TV and say, yeah, I did it on purpose, made baseball have to do something. They couldn't let him get away with it. And, the other thing is, here's the pitcher. He's armed with a baseball, and he decides he wants to send a message. What happens someday when a guy comes to the plate with a bat and decides he wants to send a message? He goes out and beats the pitcher to death with a baseball bat. I mean, how do you send your message? But, like I said, I think that the fact that he came out and said, yeah, I did it on purpose because, I wanted to send a message. Saying that made baseball have to do something about it. And as far as Bob Gibson, I don't think he was ever afraid of any batters, but I bet every batter that ever stood in a box was afraid of him.
Oh, I can promise you that.
And another guy that was close in about the same era was Don Drysdale. Wow. But he didn't throw as hard as Gibson did.
No, he didn't throw as hard. And then, you think of the modern era, who was one of the pitchers that intimidated batters a lot was Randy Johnson. He's 6'10", and he had those long arms, and man, it seemed like by the minute the ball left his hand, it was in the catcher's mitt. So I mean, intimidation is a part of the game, and I do have to agree with you. If he would have just kept his mouth shut, nobody would have ever noticed.
And Birds was afraid of Randy too. But I have to agree with Chip. I mean, I hate to disagree with you, Magic Mike. But listen, in sports, everybody's been getting on these guys for lying. This guy's gotten 5-game suspension for telling the truth. This is something that's been happening in baseball, at least for the Pirates, for the last 126 years. Like Chip said, the pitchers are going to do it. They're going to hit you. Like I said, as long as you're not beaning the guy, I don't see a problem with it. But when you start coming out and you start issuing punishments because somebody was honest, I think that's setting a bad precedent, because all these guys now are being punished for lying. So you get a guy that's telling the truth, I got to take my hat off to him.
Well, my question is, who's in charge of all this stuff? Why should you have mixed messages on any of this stuff? They used to always talk about chin music when they're throwing that high, tight fastball. Bob Gibson was a hero of mine. Look at Sandy Koufax. He was so wild, they were afraid to stand in the box on him. And then look how he'd strike everybody out. Same with Don Drysdale. He got that reputation.
Nolan Ryan was the same way when he was young.
There's another one.
He was coming 100 miles an hour. He just didn't know where.
He almost didn't make it to the major leagues with that once he got up.
And so, Al, you're almost as dark as Bob Gibson.
I think it's the lighting in here. It was cutting a lot of grass this weekend here. But you told me I could be the color guy this evening. So I'm going to try to do my best here. Sports fans, again, you can call in 412-831-3304. We'd like to hear your opinion, even about us color guys here. We got to hear what's on Mike's mind.
Well, what's on my mind is I watched the fight between Floyd Mayweather and Miguel Cotto Saturday night, and Mayweather won a decision, unanimous decision. Probably should have won the fight. I think that the judges had it pretty lopsided considering what the fight was. But you still have to think about Floyd Mayweather, who a lot of people consider one of the greatest fighters of this era. But when you think back to great fighters, you always think about one particular fighter, one particular opponent. Ali and Frazier, both those guys, those were the fights that made their careers. Leonard and Hearns, or Leonard and Duran, those are the fights that made those guys' careers. Floyd Mayweather has fought a lot of guys who are at the end of their careers. Arturo Gatti, Oscar De La Hoya, now Miguel Cotto. These guys are not going to be the marquee fight in his career. Right now, he doesn't have that fight. Right? Everybody thinks that the big fight is Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather. Personally, I think that fight will never happen because I don't think Mayweather wants any part of him. And also right now, Floyd Mayweather, June 1st, will go to jail for a few months because of a match he had against his wife and her little girl. Apparently, he won that one also. But
by knockout?
Well, at least on the little girl. I don't know about how badly he beat up his wife. He beat the girl up pretty badly. But, if I'm Floyd Mayweather, I mean, you can either be, okay, happy, I'm making the money, and I'm pretty flashy, and I talk a lot of trash and stuff like that, so I'm memorable and I can retire undefeated. But personally, I think I would want that marquee fight. I don't think that Mayweather can beat Pacquiao, but maybe he can. I would like to see that fight. I think that Mayweather should want to see that fight, and Pacquiao should want to see that fight, because that's the fight that will crown both of their careers also.
I'm back to agreeing with Magic Mike.
I agree with Mike wholeheartedly. I think, to be honest with you, I think Floyd Mayweather has been ducking Manny Pacquiao, and I think he's ducking him long enough to the point where Pacquiao's his skills are going to somewhat erode, and he may have a chance. But that is the one fight in boxing that I think across the board any boxing fan wants to see. And it's a shame that they won't put their differences aside, but that's the only fight I feel that's worth watching right now.
I just feel that boxing has become insignificant in the pro levels with all the things that have happened. I mean, I grew up in the 70s, 60s, 70s, early 80s when you had all these great boxing matches, heavyweights, and other divisions too. Now, who's really interested in it? I think the Don King era sort of burned all that out with, having a stable of one boxer on each side. And now you're saying guys are ducking people. Look at the strategy. They get all these belts. How many titles do they have, each of these guys? So, I mean, they're about the money there with what's out there, and it's not as much as it used to be.
Well, I think the biggest problem with boxing is there's too many belts. There's too many champions. There's 5 different heavyweight champions and 5 different middleweight champions, and you can't keep track of it all. Things were a lot more simple when there was 2 or 3 ruling entities, but they seem to think that more is better, and I just think it's diluted the talent.
Well, before we leave boxing, I wanted to ask you guys, with the Golden Gloves, I met some great boxers that night, and I didn't get any of your reports, Smoking Jim or Magic Mike, on who the Golden Glove champs were. Like the one kid that's about 6'8", he said he wanted to be on my show he was calling. I said, no, it's ours. Smoking Jim set me up. So if this young man won, you got to give me a heads up on that. We'll have to have an invite to him, and he can take my seat for, I think, 5 minutes.
Yeah, you're speaking in terms of 6'7" Mike Shook, that's 250 pounds, one of the top personal trainers, in the surrounding area as well. He lost decision to Fast Freddie Latham, and Fast Freddie Latham went on to win the state championship. And Freddie Latham is fighting for a national title right now, and he is already signed to have his first pro fight in June. So
wow.
Next year, the 6'7" guy, we can start having him on the show. He's determined to stay amateur one more year, win the state championship, and maybe win a national championship before he moves on into the professional ranks.
Yeah, Freddie Latham's come a very long way, because when Coach D first started rolling him out there, he was not all that good, and he trained him a lot. And but Freddie, gradually, became better. He was a nice guy, and guy that you would like to see win, but a lot of times was just overmatched with people. But he learned a lot from that, and to be where he's at right now is really good. Jim and I had an opportunity last Wednesday to sit down and talk with Eric Sidnor.
Wow.
And Eric Sidnor, I think, is right now the best amateur fighter that we have in Pittsburgh. He's very new to it, not a lot of experience with it, but he's learning really fast. Has great power in both hands. He's pretty quick, and is really interested in learning more and improving his boxing.
And where's he from?
He's from New York.
Okay.
But he's actually in Pittsburgh going to the Art Institute for 4 more years.
So he's a Pittsburgh guy right now.
Right now, yeah. That's exactly what he said. He said, "I'm from Pittsburgh." So.
He has a term paper due. I think that
Big Ben?
Ben's wife's going to do his term paper.
I got her on speed dial.
It's just one more guy that we failed to mention. Pittsburgh only had 2 fighters win a state championship this year. Fast Freddie Latham and 141-pound dynamo that's being trained by Jimmy Savetic is Amani Everhart. He beat the defending national champion, who is a fighter from Philadelphia. And Amani is now fighting for a national title right now, and I think that he can go professional as well. So boxing is alive and well here in Pittsburgh. And just to get back to the pros, the one thing that's in boxing is great, and I think it's still great even in the professional level. It's not as great as it used to be because we don't have any American heavyweight champions. They're all in in Russia and those other places. But the problem is, even for a guy like Money Mayweather, who doesn't like to be active, and he proved that by retiring for a while, and now he's going to jail. But even if he wanted to fight more actively, he signed with pay-per-view, and you can only fight every 6 months on pay-per-view. So he can only fight twice a year, even if he wanted to be active. And I think that is a problem with boxing. Hey, bring back the Bum of the Month Club.
Yeah, that was fun.
I think you're right, Jim. I wouldn't say that boxing has become insignificant. It just doesn't get a lot of the exposure that it does when you have a great American heavyweight fighter, a great American heavyweight champion. But if you look at the weight classes between welterweight and junior middleweight, there are a lot of great fighters in there and a lot of great fights, because those guys fight each other. Whereas in the heavyweights, they try to avoid each other until they get a title shot. But these guys in the middleweights and the welterweights, they fight each other all the time. There's always a lot of good fights to watch in that weight class.
I agree.
Well, you have to give me a heads up on what fights to watch now, so I can get back into the sport and promote it a little bit. Because then I'll stand corrected. Whoa, look how dark I am. What's with the lighting here?
And you got a fro.
Is that what
Zazu's going to have to cut, Marianne with the Zazu's going to have to cut my hair a little closer than here.
is that a spray on to you?
I just know, Joe, our cameraman, Joe, what are you doing? Smoking Joe. We're brothers from a different mother now. What happened here? Thank you. Can I go on Steel City Sports World now, or what? You kept me off of the show.
So getting back to the sports world.
Something serious.
We're deep now into the NHL playoffs. It
Really?
looks like the Flyers are facing elimination tonight.
Wow.
After they took apart the Penguins in the first round, New Jersey seems to have their number. And I think maybe the Flyers thought that you could win the Stanley Cup after the first round, but you have to win 16 games, and they're only 5 wins into the playoff run. And I'll tell you what, New Jersey seemed. I'm looking for New Jersey to close them out tonight, and I'll be very happy to see them go. And I'd also like to see the Rangers bid adieu to the Washington Capitals, the Western Division. Los Angeles and Phoenix. Who would have ever thought those two teams would be playing for the Western Finals?
Really, the 8 and 7 seed. Los Angeles Kings, the 8 seed, knocked out the 1 and 2 seeds in 9 games. Oh, we have a phone call.
That's what happens when you talk hockey. People want to get in.
Out in the neighborhood.
Hello, caller. What's your name and what would you like to talk about?
This is Joanne Quinn Smith, the Techno Granny, and I'm called to talk about the Pittsburgh Passion game on Saturday night.
All right. Well, tell us about that.
Well, went to the game. It was the opener, Cleveland Fusion and Pittsburgh Passion. And the comments, there were 4 of us, and the comments were either Cleveland Fusion is really, really not good, or the Pittsburgh Passion is excellent. And I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Well, maybe it's a combination of both, because the Pittsburgh Passion is usually a very good team, and, well, anything from Cleveland, it's not hard to believe that they kind of terrible. So, having been to the game, what do you think is the outcome of that?
Well, it was interesting that we looked off on the sidelines, and there appeared to be maybe 15 players on the Fusion, and out there on the field for the Passion was probably 50. So I think maybe their players might have been a little tired. It's a big field, and I'm not a real super football fan, understand. So I don't know what you guys do, but I was wondering what you think about the size of the teams, and is there a good reason for that?
Well, the one thing, and this is Smoking Jim. Thank you so much for the call. I follow the Pittsburgh Passion. I've been following them for 10 years. Not only are they a great team, it's hard for them to find legitimate competition during the regular season because nobody wants them in their conference because they're so dominant. Their owner, Teresa Khan, does a great job. They got a great quarterback. They got a great offensive philosophy. I will be at the game in 2 weeks on May 19th. It'll be in Ambridge, PA, so I'll be there live and well. I'm doing locker room interviews, but the Pittsburgh Passion, don't forget, has won a national championship. They're professional football, so it's similar to the Super Bowl, but they call it the Superb Bowl. And fortunately for this city, the City of Champions, this year will be the first year ever in the history of women professional football that the Superb Bowl will be played right here in the city of Pittsburgh. So whether the Passion is in it or not, I think there's 50-some teams throughout the country that plays professionally women football, but the 2 best teams will play for the national title right here in the city of Pittsburgh. And the Passion's in the process right now of building a multi-facility stadium of their own. So I'm so proud of the Pittsburgh Passion, black and gold. They do a great job, and they got some great dancers out there. My girl Chrissy from St. Vincent College is one of the girls on the dance team, and my good friend Franco Harris is one of the owners.
Now, that's good news about the Super Bowl being played here. By the way, this is Joanne Quinn Smith, the host of Positively Pittsburgh Live Radio, and I love it that you guys are doing this sports talk thing locally, and I think it's one of the good news things about Pittsburgh. Somewhere along the line, I'd like to feature you guys. And by the way, say hello to Alavi, the talking machine, for me.
I'm here.
Now, Joanne said hi.
They're holding me back.
Put some light on him so we can see.
They won't let me talk. They say I have too much color to the show, so the talking machine's been silent.
You know, I will say that one of the things that I heard, and tell me about this, I had thought their quarterback that played on Saturday, I want to say Lisa, but I'm
Lisa Horton.
But anyway, they were saying that her arm is not strong enough on the long passes. What do you think about that?
Oh, my goodness. Well, you know, Lisa Horton was an All-American softball player at the University of Slippery Rock. She's actually from Ohio. I haven't seen her play in the last 2 years because she had stepped away and left town, but she was Pro Bowl level. She was considered the best quarterback in all of women's football when she played. She went on about a 4-year run where there was nobody better than her as far as passing the football or running. But I have not seen her play this year, and it's not uncommon as you take some hits on those shoulders that you may lose a little velocity on the ball. But I'd be very surprised because she had a cannon for an arm when she used to play. So this is her first year back, so I'm looking forward to seeing her playing on May 19th.
Could be just the first game too, right?
Pardon me?
Could be just a first game warm-up, too, right? You don't want to give everything in the first game, right?
Yeah, possibly. I don't want to speculate because I didn't see it, but I will let you know definitely on May 19th whether she can throw that long ball this year or not.
Okay, well, this is the first time I had a chance to call in live, and I wanted to do that because I thought the Pittsburgh Passion game was big news. And thank you so much for your answers. Thanks for doing what you do. It's delightful to hear you guys put things into perspective of the average sports fan, and I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you, Joanne. You know, before
Thank
you go,
very much.
Where does the Techno Granny nickname come from?
Oh, my grandson gave me that name. I have been doing internet radio for 5 years, and he heard my voice coming out of the radio one day and said, "Grandma, is that your voice? Why is that?" I said, "Well, it's like a podcast." And he said, "Well, you mean like on iTunes?" I said, "Yes." And he was young, and he said, "Wow, you're the Techno Granny." So I have a show also called the Techno Granny.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for calling.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you very
Joanne.
much for calling.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. Well,
So
that
said
was,
Pittsburgh
nice.
beating up on Cleveland. I guess nothing's new. Same old, right? The men's teams, the women's teams, it doesn't matter who.
Who would have thought we were talking Pittsburgh Passion talk here, too? That was great. Great insights there. From the NFL scout to the women's football scout.
But you guys, if you, I just made a phone call. But if you guys
Who
get
you
a
calling?
chance, I'm not sure if this year, I got to look at the Passion schedule, but if you get a chance, you'd be surprised at who owns some of these professional football teams. Roy Jones Jr., how we got connected was he was the owner of a team in Pensacola, Florida. At halftime, they would have cockfighting. But at Cincinnati has a Cincinnati.
Did you just slip that in on us?
Cincinnati's owner, their football team is very good, and it's Icky Woods, who used to play for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Icky Shuffle.
Icky Shuffle, and Icky had a. I like to do a story on Icky Woods. Icky Woods, before he got into being the owner of the professional women's football team, he used to sell meat door to door. So he had fell off of hard times, and he sold a lot of meat because people wouldn't believe it was Icky Woods, but he would do the Icky Shuffle when they buy them about
Was the meat any good?
Yeah, buy them about $75 worth of T-bone steaks after that. But Icky Woods, a former college roommate at UNLV, with Arm the Hammer Gilliam from Bethel Park, and Randall Cunningham that played for the Philadelphia Eagles. But Icky Woods lost his son, who was a parade All-American football player. He had asthma or something like that, ended up dying after a football practice. So Icky Woods has thrown himself into women's football. It's helping him to get over the loss of his son. and I'm looking forward to maybe doing a story on the Ickey Shuffle.
Wow. Sounds good.
Well, we can't let the night go by without Chip giving us a rundown on what's up with the Pirates. Actually, not looking all that bad.
No, they got tattooed a couple of times by the Cardinals last week. After last Monday night, I was going on and on about the Pirates pitching staff's ERA. But, they shouldn't be too embarrassed about getting tattooed by the Cardinals, because right now the Cardinals are the best hitting team in the majors, and they're doing it to pretty much everybody's pitching staff. And, oh, by the way, they do happen to be the defending world champions. But one of the things that I saw this week that really, gives me reason for hope this year is that Pedro Alvarez has now seemed to have gotten his stroke back. He's got his average up over 250 now.
Wow.
And he's got 7 home runs, and they put him back in the 4th spot in the batting order, which is where he should be batting. Somebody with the kind of power that he has. I think Andrew McCutchen can only be better batting in front of him with Pedro Alvarez, a threat to put the ball over the fence or drive the ball somewhere. So, I think this is going to bode well for the Pirates. The pitching staff is still doing pretty well. Bedard has been really good this year as far as his outings. He just doesn't have a lot of wins to show for it because his first 4 games he was 0-4 and the offense only scored 2 runs for him. But I like the way the team's headed, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. I'll be down at the ball yard on Saturday night rooting on my Buccos.
Is that a fireworks night?
No, I went for the Joel Hanrahan bobblehead.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was bobblehead or fireworks. Thanks for showing your support there.
No, but I'll tell you what, a night down at PNC Park, it's a great way to spend an evening. If that isn't one of the prettiest parks in the United States, I don't know which one is. But it'll be great to see the Pirates, put one on the Astros.
And I tell you what, the guys here on our panel, we were kind of split with Pedro Alvarez. I wanted him to stay up in the big leagues. I know a lot of people wanted him to be sent down to the minors.
So I have to eat crow every week.
But I just felt that with his power, what does Pirates have to lose? You have to live and die with a guy that you chose this highly. You felt like 2 years ago he was ready for the big league, so you have to live and die with his growing pains. And let's not forget that a guy like Willie Mays, back when there was only maybe 2 or 3 other black players at that time in Major League Baseball, went several games and several at-bats before he ever got a hit, and nobody gave up on Willie Mays.
I think it was about 40. I think he was about 40, and Mickey Mantle had that problem, Roberto Clemente.
Wow.
But now they coddle these guys. Look, you got coaches and coaches. I'll eat some of that crow every week that you bring it.
Good coaching can bring the talent out of a quality ball player, but you can also micromanage somebody and turn them into a wreck. And I think that's too many people were telling Pedro Alvarez to do this, to do that, to do the other thing. And I think one of the smartest things Hurdle did in spring training was letting Alvarez know that he was a starting third baseman, put him in the lineup, and let him play. And, he's played his way through it. And I think that was the best way to find out, because they had to find out this year if this kid could play or not.
Well, Chip,
because they're going to have to sign him if they want to keep him. And they need, if they're going to throw any money at him, they got to find out if he can produce or not.
But is 1 year or 1/2 a season enough to sign him for $50-60 million? The one thing that I like about him is he come to camp in shape this year. So maybe that's a coincidence. Look at the shape he's in. Yeah. And they rave about that.
It remains to be seen what kind of money that they'll offer him. But there's signs of life in the patient, and that's I think what we needed to see more than anything.
And Clint Hurdle's probably up for Coach of the Year. I think that small ball is working out well for the Pirates.
What's their record now, Smoking Jim? You sound as sarcastic as I am. What happened here? You're becoming our new color man on this show. How did that happen?
They do play an exciting brand of baseball, man.
What's their record now, Chip?
You're putting me on the spot. I didn't check the paper.
No, I know. I'm just kidding you. But it's a lot worse than it was when we were talking about last week when they were only 2 games under 500. But that's just a minor point. They still have to get past 100 games in my book to show a good season this year. So hopefully they'll get 101 good games.
But I think that we definitely got to talk about a little bit of everything, and being that we talked about the NHL, and that was exciting. There's another brand of playoffs going on, and that's the NBA. Magic Mike picked Chicago to win, but unfortunately with the injuries, it looks like the Chicago Bulls could be eliminated. San Antonio Spurs have a local guy from the University of Pittsburgh in Shinley, DeJuan Blair, and they have the best record in basketball, but I think that they won't win it all. But I think that basketball right now has a team that's the villain, which is the Miami Heat. So everybody's looking for the Miami Heat to get beat, and they'll probably eliminate the New York Knicks because Linsanity is injured, and one of their star players punched a fire hydrant.
And he lost. He lost the fight. I want to see that.
Stitches.
I want to see that match.
And that's another thing. These athletes, they do foolish things like that. He ruined any chance his team had of doing anything in the playoffs by punching a piece of glass. It didn't take a lot of intelligence to figure out
Chip,
that
it
one.
doesn't. I'm a bottom line guy. Miami Heat all the way.
But
They're the team that beats.
There's 3 other series going on tonight. There's 4 NBA games tonight, and all 4 series are at 3-1. And what I feel is I think every team that's up 3-1 tonight going into their series, they're going to close them out. And I think Boston's going to close out Atlanta. The Knicks are going to go down to the Heat. Who else?
And Chicago's going to be eliminated.
Yeah, Chicago's going to be eliminated by Philly. But the team that I think in the West that you're going to have to keep an eye on is the San Antonio Spurs. And the San Antonio Spurs, very quietly has amassed the best record in the league this year. Tim Duncan is no slouch, and he's only won, 4 championships since he's been there?
Wow.
Very quietly,
Wow.
very quietly. And DeJuan Blair's a young power forward. And Greg Popovich does a very good job of getting his team ready for the playoffs. I still like the Oklahoma City Thunder to take it all this year. I made that prediction early, and I'm going to stick with that one.
Well, only problem I have with San Antonio is, like you said, they won 4 championships, but it's the decisions or lack of decisions that they have been making lately. Their point guard Parker, I love him, but how can you lose your wife Eva from Desperate Housewife? When you lose something like that, you're not making good decisions. I'm sorry.
I thought we were talking basketball.
We're talking basketball. That's part of it.
Yeah, that's part of it.
It's the whole game.
I did.
Don't you watch Basketball Wives?
I did predict that Chicago would win it all, but based on the fact that Derrick Rose is the best player in the game, and in game 2 he blew his knee out, and won't be back for the remainder. Well, the remainder of their playoffs is tonight, but he won't be back probably for a while. That's basketball is like the one game where one player can take the entire game over. Sometimes in hockey you think you could do that, but you can do a lot of things to hinder a hockey player. In basketball, you can't even touch the guy. So if you have one player that can take the game over, he can pretty much do that, and one guy can make the difference in a game.
Well, with Derrick Rose, I do agree with you. He's top 2 or 3 players in the league. The thing that's got me concerned about him, he blew out his knee, and that's going to take some time to rehab and everything. But he seemed to spend a lot of time on the injured reserve this year, and he's too young of a man to be having the kind of problems that he's been having. Those are usually the kind of injuries that guys have after they've played in the year 10, 12 years. And I'm just wondering about his durability moving forward.
Just ask the Emperor here. There'll be another guy who'll come up and play. They'll get somebody else out of college.
Calipari will get somebody.
Calipari has 5 guys going to the NBA.
He's got 5
The Emperor says,
And Derrick Rose was one of his players from Memphis.
If
But,
he didn't blow his knee out, he might have been one of his players again.
yeah. But Magic, there's room on the Miami Heat bandwagon.
No,
We're on it here.
I think the San Antonio Spurs look pretty tough. I believe that they will probably win everything now. But the Miami Heat, I don't believe that they're the villains, the bad guys. I think a lot of people like him. Everybody gets on LeBron James, even still, over the fact that he left Cleveland. Oh, it's not that he left; it's the way. Who cares how you leave Cleveland, as long as you leave Cleveland.
As quickly as possible.
I've had really bad days here, and to fix those, I would drive to Cleveland just for the opportunity to leave, because it makes you feel so good to get out of that town.
Mike, you bring up some great points on that. I've been a LeBron fan, whether he's in Cleveland or not, just because how he plays, and I've stood on the record here that he will not choke in the finals this year. He will not disappear in the fourth quarter.
Now, you might be right. He might not get to the finals.
Well, I'm trying to be right one way or the other.
And like Mike was saying, anytime you want to feel good about yourself again and you're feeling down in the dumps, drive to Cleveland and look at the Cuyahoga River and imagine it being on fire.
Again, not again. And if you want to call 412-831-3304, or check us out on YouTube.
As dirty as Pittsburgh ever was, we didn't burn water.
You just couldn't drink it, bathe in it, or whatever else.
But one thing I can say about LeBron James, and I got to agree with you wholeheartedly, Al, is that LeBron is never going to come up short in the finals. The last game against New York, where Miami Heat lost, in the closing seconds of the game, he was more than happy to let Dwayne Wade take that last shot and miss.
Well, and I'm not a very big LeBron James fan.
You're right.
Okay, because I think LeBron James has been anointed the greatest basketball player on the planet without yet having earned it. But I will tell you this: LeBron James put together one of the strongest regular seasons that in recent memory this year. For the Heat, and I probably look for him to win the league MVP for the regular season. And you got to give him props for that. But I still gotta like the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think they're an up and coming young team, and I think their enthusiasm will carry them through.
And that's a good point. They got Durant, maybe the best player in basketball, whose last name is not James, and Westbrook. It may be the best point guard in basketball.
They complement each other well.
Now that Derrick Rose is going, that Westbrook is fast and don't mind shooting it, chucking it up. So
I know people talk about LeBron James being the best player in basketball, but I think there are very, very few people who can make a claim to be the greatest basketball player ever. And if you haven't scored, if you haven't scored 100 points a game, you're not in that conversation.
Wilt Chamberlain. I will speak for Mike on this little pause.
I agree.
We talked about that Wilt Chamberlain before, probably the greatest basketball player ever. And I think we all pretty much agree on that. There's some other good ones also.
Yeah, and
over time.
you know what the funny thing is, we all kind of in agreement there. Wilt Chamberlain was an amazing basketball player, but at the time when Wilt was ruling the hardwood, he was overshadowed by Bill Russell, and I was reading an article in a magazine about when the NBA was young, and when the NBA was in its fledgling form, there was only 9 teams in the league, and the Celtics were winning championship after championship, and Bill Russell winning, I believe he won 10 as a player.
He had help, though. He had some help.
Oh, he had good teams around him, but
and a good coach.
Once you had a player, you owned him. He couldn't go and shop his skills. There wasn't free agency like there is now. But Wilt was overshadowed by Russell because Russell won all the championships. But Wilt Chamberlain was just an amazing athlete.
What haven't we covered, Smoking Jim? Where else do you want to go here with this?
Well, the one thing, just to touch on the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's always fun to talk about. And I'm very proud of the Pittsburgh Steelers, even though I rated the draft below sea level this year. But I was proud of them for reaching out the olive branch to a couple local guys. I drafted Tony Clemens from the University of Colorado, a 6'2" wide receiver that started his career at Michigan, that was an All-American high school player at Valley High School. But I tell you what, I was very impressed with them bringing in a linebacker from the University of Pittsburgh, Lindsey from Aliquippa. I think that he's a guy that's hungry. He was an outstanding player at the University of Pittsburgh, and I think that he fits in that 3-4 defense He can get after the passer. He can rush. So that could be a steal in free agency, bringing in a guy that spent 4 years in the offices next door to the Steelers. So it'll be the same practice field for him.
Do you have any insight into the rookie weekend?
A little bit. Rookie weekend.
How did Mike Adams look?
Mike Adams looked like he wanted to.
Marshmallow?
Yeah, he looked like he wanted to drive back down to Farrell and get him a bag of weed. But Mike Adams, as usual, was soft. He did a lot of standing around. The problem that you're having with those guys, number one, you got the guy that dresses like he's homeless as your offensive coordinator, Haley, who didn't comb his hair the whole draft weekend. But the problem is he has not given out until this week his new and improved offensive playbook. And it's going to be kind of a ridiculous thing because they're putting so much value and time on the first 2 draft picks with our offensive linemen, but both of them are on quarter systems, and they cannot even have any contact with the Pittsburgh Steelers until June 15th when their class graduates from college. So now you got from now till June 15th that you can't even be in touch with these kids, and that's about 3 weeks before training camp. So they're basically coming into training camp, and hopefully you can get them signed. If you get them signed, they're basically coming in training camp real green. So it's going to be a tough learning curve. They may have to hire full-time Big Ben's wife to tutor these guys. But I was proud of them. I've never seen a 4th and 5th round draft choice, Rainey and a Samoan nose guard. They were signed. Steelers signed them over the rookie weekend. I thought that was excellent. Those guys are signed, ready to go, so they'll be in camp.
How's your man Coleman look on signing? Is he going to sign right up?
Who? Who?
I thought you said the one receiver there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Your
Clemens.
Tony Sorry, I
Okay,
misspoke there for you.
Well, while we're on the subject of football, finally, discipline has been handed down to the players involved in Bonus Gate. Wow. And did Roger Goodell overstep his boundaries and assigning punishments to these people because now there's a contention with the players union because apparently there's wording in the collective bargaining agreement that anything happened prior to when this agreement was signed that players could not be punished for. So where does that leave the NFL? And this whole thing has just been handled badly from start to finish. And and if the players had any respect for the game or anything else, they would just take their punishment, shut up, and let this pass. But the players union's going to drag it through the mud and keep it in the news. And what kind of a suit is going to follow that, and how will that affect the collective bargaining agreement?
Oh, it all depends on what's in there, of course. But the other thing is here, you have Goodell making these decisions. Where's the proof? I mean, if you had proof on Smoking Jim writes a good column, because he does write a good column, then you would show it. So you must follow his column on the New Pittsburgh Courier. Check that out, because you get these insights in the written word, not just from Smoking Jim on TV here. But that's part of the problem that you have here. Where is the proof? Is
the proof
somebody's
they have
recordings.
is they've got the testimony that they actually had at somebody that was a federal attorney general or something like that. It's a woman's judge, and I can't remember what her name was, but she reviewed the information and she said that the evidence that they have against these players is strong, and I just find it kind of ridiculous that the players union would say that they've never proven that these players took the money. Well, the players are as guilty as the system was in place. Somebody got paid. What? Nobody took the money? I mean, why don't they just admit this has happened, get it over with, so that everybody can move on and quit dealing with this situation?
Here's the only problem I have with the whole thing, Chip, and it's obvious that this bounty system not only went on in New Orleans, but it went on in other places.
Absolutely.
But here's the only problem that I have with it. The problem is, one major problem I have, how in the world can you want to hurt Brett Favre? I think he still could be playing. Greatest quarterback of all time. You putting 10,000. Vilma, I'm still mad at you, 10,000 to hurt my man Brett Favre. But here's the problem. The problem is that the New Orleans Saints organization were warned to put this to stop. The New Orleans Saints organization never told the players. So now you're making Vilma sit out for a whole year, and he was never warned by his coaches to stop what they were doing. So that's the only thing. If Vilma and those guys and those players were warned to stop it and they continue, then I would agree wholeheartedly. But I think that they have some ground to stand on because the coaches and the coordinators and the general manager never told the players to stop after they were warned.
I know your average football player is dumb as a rock, but do you really think that they needed to be warned to realize that going out trying to hurt another player is not a good thing to do?
Well, my point is they knew that what they were doing was wrong, and they didn't need somebody to tell them that what they were doing was wrong. And and one of my bigger problems with this whole thing is that this, the Saints organization is complicit in this from top to bottom.
Watch them big words.
You say that? I got a 50 center in on you. But but here's the thing that gets me. Okay, we hand out all these suspensions and everything. Why do these people even have jobs? Okay, if they were responsible for this and created this environment, don't you think that say, you know what, you lose the opportunity to have this job. It's a high-profile, high-paying job. You should be privileged to have it and treat it accordingly. Cool. No, you're done. You're gone. And you know what? And the Saints should have to rebuild from the ground floor up. And then you would never see another team do this again. But they're never going to do that.
Well, yeah, but part of the thing is you're going to have this happen. Like we've said, we can't be that naive. Players do try to hurt other players. Everybody's played sports. You're not supposed to, but there are guys that do it. Now, how much did Vilma get? $10,000 to lose a $2.6 million salary? And whether he knew or not it's right or wrong, what are the rules of this game? And that's part of the problem. I mean, what is Goodell doing? He's the judge, jury, and everything else. There should be some other body that you go to rule on this.
I agree with that.
No, I don't. I think that that's the job of the commissioner. That's what he does. That's what they're supposed to do.
You've got too
and
much power
why do you put the your league's business in the hands of somebody that's not involved with the league? I wouldn't do that. And my problem is with the players' union. Players' union is defending these guys who are being suspended for taking the money. Aren't they also supposed to represent the players that those guys were trying to hurt? Seriously, I mean, what is it?
You're absolutely correct.
They should be fining these guys too. You don't try to hurt your union brothers.
Let me go on the record here with Mike. We've argued about union logic here, and his logic, as the British say, is spot on. If you represent guys doing criminal acts, you have to protect the guys who are getting hurt. It's just common sense, and that's what I was saying last week. When you have a union that's too strong or a company that's too strong, look what you have. None of us here can figure out what the right thing to do is using their rules. We've already given you our opinions, and they're right. You do the right thing. This isn't happening. Players Union, Goodell, all the way down the list. Even that judge that Chip said looked at this stuff, if it's so positive that they're guilty, why don't you show it to the public then?
They're probably waiting to destroy it like they did this stuff.
Well, that's part of what I was getting to, that you have Spygate, that how did that slip through everything, that the tapes were destroyed. So.
Well, it's kind of hard, too, to follow the money trail when Vilma put up $10,000 if you hurt Kurt Warner or Brett Favre, and you couldn't hurt Brett Favre, so the money stayed in Vilma's pocket.
Whoa. He's guilty of fraud there, misrepresentation.
Yeah, they didn't hurt him, man. It's a bounty. You
keep the bounty.
Yeah, you got to bring them in, man, and they didn't bring them in. But football is not a contact sport; it's a collision sport.
Absolutely.
And these guys, they have incentives all along, all the way from high school to college. It may not be in payment as far as money, but it's in recognition, and recognition is the oxygen to the soul. You look at any Ohio State game, you can't fit another Buckeye on them defensive helmets, and they didn't get that from patting the guy on the butt as he was going out of bounds.
Ooh,
That was
another
far.
tattoo.
No, how about a car? What about a car?
They are the most tattooed
9 of
team
them or
in the Big Ten.
Or a blunt.
Well, you do need some type of rules, and that's the problem. We don't have the rules that they follow, and it depends on who's going to give out the penalties. That's part of the problem here. So there's not fairness there.
There should be, I think, a better system at punishing the players. I mean, Goodell is judge, jury, and executioner, and that's not the way that the justice system should work. I don't know what the answer is, but I mean, the players' union is the arguments they come up with are just absolutely laughable at this point.
Well, I'm on record of saying that I think the Pittsburgh Steelers, now that many of the Bill Cowher players are retiring or have been forced to
I
retire.
never heard this. Can you please repeat
that they were going 8-8 this year, maybe 9-7. But do you guys feel that things may change in the division, being that Terrell Suggs is out for the year for the Baltimore Ravens with an Achilles injury from playing basketball? Oh, I mean, those reports were false. No, he was training. He was training for football.
The year after Troy won the NFL Defensive Player of the Year, and then he spent most of the next season hurt. Look at the difference that the Steelers defense had.
Good point.
Terrell Suggs, NFL Defensive Player of the Year, he's absolutely going to be missed because I hate the guy because he wears the purple and black. If he was wearing black and gold, I'd probably love him. But every time he played the Steelers, he was like basically unblockable. It's like he spent more time in the backfield than our running backs did.
Except I got to differ with you. He played excellent at home, but when he traveled, he didn't always show up for every game, even the Steeler games. He has a few issues on the road, which, what is it, still a 16-game season? So there's 8 of them that matter.
But
it will make a difference.
But the Baltimore Ravens did get a steal early in the second round when they got Upshaw, maybe the best rushing linebacker defensive end in the draft from Alabama. Should have been a top 10 pick. He slipped to the second round, so he steps right in. So maybe the loss of Suggs may not be as bad.
Well, yeah, exactly. Baltimore, I mean, Suggs is a big loss, but Baltimore has plenty of players that can step in there and not play quite as well, but still play. And as far as Suggs or anybody else being in the Steelers' backfield with the running backs, well, when you're rushing against Max Turnstile Parks and Trey Essex, there's not that much stuff in your room there, But anyway, I think that the division, I think Cleveland has improved themselves a lot. I think that they're going to make a little bit of a mark in the division. To have the best running back in the division, which they clearly do,
yes,
that is going to make a big difference.
Yeah, well, Cleveland couldn't do anything but get better because and I always have to throw my jabs in at Cleveland. But yeah, I actually think that the AFC North this year is probably going to be like the toughest division in the NFL. Okay, right? The Cincinnati's coming off a good year. The Steelers and the Ravens were, they're every year they're fighting for the title, and Cleveland at some point has to get better. I mean, they can't continually keep getting worse, but somehow they seem to find.
The question I have to close this up a little bit is: Steeler fans were disappointed with 12-4. What are you going to be thinking this year? That's the question. Will Smoking Jim be right, Mike?
This year they're going to be thinking, "Let's go Pens."
From a true Steeler fan, Mike has spoken.
They will be nowhere near 12-4 this year.
Oh.
And that's just about it. Thanks to Chip Hayner, Smoking Jim Frazier, Al Levine, the Talking Machine, and I'm Mike Migliori, and we will see you next week on Pittsburgh Sportsline.